Avinash, hi. It's good to have you with us today.
Hey Ashu, hi. Such a pleasure to be here.
I'm so happy that we're finally seeing each other, right? I mean, it's been a long time since we met.
Absolutely. That's right. That's right.
Avinash, I
Looking.
am very excited for the discussion that we are, going to have today, right? Because I have had the opportunity of knowing the product personally. But the fact that we can take it to such a large audience, to Asia Tech, is all the more exciting, right? Because
Absolutely.
this is a product which is something that a lot of founders should look at, right? And how beautifully can it help them improve their stakeholder relationship, and that's where the beauty of the product is, right? So very,
Absolutely.
very excited for the discussion today.
Thanks a lot, Ashu, for this opportunity to take the product to Asiatic Journal audience. Really excited about this opportunity.
Awesome. So Avinash, before we dive into the discussion today, right, I would love you to take us through your professional career. You've been a very, very accomplished professional. You've been an entrepreneur. You've been across startups. You've run very large enterprises, right? So you've been there. You've done that, right? And now an entrepreneurial hat, right? Just take us through that journey. It'll be lovely for everybody to know of the diversity that you've had in your career.
Sure. All right. I'm a co-founder of VenEx, VenEx.co.in. Friends call me Avi. And um, so VenEx is a path-breaking HR tech solution that we've just co-founded, Pooja and myself, about 6 months ago.
Sure.
Before this, I was working as an investment banker, as a partner with an investment bank, helping high potential early stage ventures raise capital.
Right.
And before that, I worked with Times Internet as a chief operating officer and led 5 business P&Ls there. Before this, it has been always basically entrepreneurial and entrepreneurial journey. I've had the fortune of working with high growth ventures across these 23 years of journey after BTech from IIT Bombay in '97, and also got the opportunity to start to found ventures. And this is my VenEx is my second venture.
Wow.
So I think it's through the entrepreneurial ecosystem is when Ashu, you and I met, right? At
Right.
the PhD Chamber of Commerce in that panel. So yeah, great and excited to be doing this session with you today.
I think which is one thing which is very common across IIT Delhi and IIT Bombay is that most of the people who sort of who kind of graduated from these institutions, I think have that bug of starting out. Be it in the enterprises that they work in or they start out, right? I think there's something which is very unique about these two institutions.
Yeah, sure, absolutely. Yeah, but in the past 2 decades, a lot has changed, and we've seen
Right.
now, a lot of other institutions have also started up,
Yeah.
various entrepreneurial cells in their, campuses and stuff,
Right.
and a lot of activities happening.
Sure.
So, really, really excited to be here in this ecosystem at this time when there
Right.
is so much action happening.
No, I completely agree. Avinash, we straight sort of, dive into the product, right? So why VenEx? How did it happen? Take us to the journey of building an exciting product that's something that has not existed in the Indian market, not even international markets, right? So very unique product itself. Just take us to, the nuances and nuts and bolts of creating VenEx. How did it happen?
Sure. So actually, it all perhaps started with this belief, this conviction that it's entrepreneurs and innovation that, that is our best bet to cater to so many challenges that our world is facing today, right? And
Mhm.
not just the pandemic, right? I mean, even before this, we all know about all the challenges that the world is facing,
Right.
and pandemic is only added to that.
Sure.
And at the same time, there is so much of innovation happening across all levels, right? In science, technology, and applications of both, right? And there are unique challenges that we've seen as entrepreneurs that we face, and also by being super tuned to the startup ecosystem, especially growth stage ventures, we've seen the unique challenges that they face in their not just 0 to 1 journey, but 1 to 10 and 10 to 100 journey, right? In scaling teams and ventures, scaling their innovations,
Right.
which is where the bulk of the large impact is going to come from, right? So that belief and that observation of these unique challenges, unique patterns, led us to think about creating structural solutions. By structural, I mean not just consulting or advisory solutions, because there are plenty of those, but creating unique structural solutions to help growth stage ventures and scale stage ventures, in their journeys to build the teams and scale the teams beyond their Series A, Series B rounds of funding, right? So that led to creating VenEx, actually. Yeah.
Fantastic. Avinash, it's I think that's a fantastic background that you've given to why VenEx happened, right? Why don't you take us through the product, right? Why don't you take us through the pieces of the product, right? In terms of how it works, what's the design, how does it get integrated within the organization? Some of those pieces.
Sure. All right. So, I do have a couple of slides, but let me first kind of, through this conversation, just, set the stage for that. So, see, when we look at the journey, especially of, 10 to 100 or Series B and beyond of growth stage and scale stage ventures, right? The biggest challenge that, or the biggest differentiator between success and failure is around the organization. It gets all the more difficult to build, scale, and motivate a growing team of superstars, right? What happens is that at the early stages, 0 to 1 journey of the venture, there is a different kind of magic which is already there, right? There's a different kind of chemistry. The team is smaller, everybody has skin in the game, right? There is a beautiful magical resonance that is there, right? But as the venture gets funded and then starts growing their team at a fast pace, hiring quality suffers. And skin in the game and team ownership and resonance takes a big hit. And that becomes a big reason for ventures not reaching the pinnacle of success versus those who do, right? Great ventures use tools like ESOPs, compensation tools like ESOPs, to reward employees and have their skin in the game. But what has happened is that ESOPs also, which is the traditional tool for that, has become more of a vanity tool over these years, because employees do not perceive the value of ESOPs, right? There are multiple problems with the ESOP model as a compensation structure. And VenEx is a completely new age compensation structure which enables skin in the game and team ownership in an equity-free model. The problems that ESOPs structure faces is that employees do not know, the value for the employees is locked up, and they don't know when the value will unlock and at what value they will unlock, their options will unlock, right? And that unpredictability makes it very intangible for employees to actually value it against cash. And the young talent today, as we all know, is very smart, and it's also very impatient. And they love simplicity. Any complicated clauses, related to vesting, restrictions on vesting, expiry of exercise period, and all of those things, right. They don't understand that, right? A lot of senior leaders even do not understand those concerns. And we've had bad stories like, in the industry where, for example, Redbus was a great learning experience where a lot of employees did not get benefited from that acquisition by Naspers, right, because there was no accelerated vesting clause. Mm-hmm. Right? And there are enough good stories. Ventures like Flipkart regularly have bought back ESOPs, right? So a lot of, but those are rare, right? Most of the ventures, if you look at the broader employee base across the startup ecosystem among growth stage ventures, the broader employee base has not so far benefited from ESOP structures. Right. And therefore there is a lack of trust and lack of value. So the founders are actually giving a piece of their company to the employees, right? It's hugely valuable from the perspective of the founders. Right. But the employees, do not value it. They first want their cash hike, especially if it's a funded venture. The cash hike is a default expectation from their previous pay. And on top of that, if the company is giving ESOPs, that becomes like a bonus. Even that has become more of an expectation. that yes, I need my cash hike as well as I need my ESOPs, right? So, but employees are not willing to take any, if they're getting a better cash offer, they tend to go for that, right? Given other things are equal, right?
Right.
So that is a huge problem. So ESOP structures or ESOP models are becoming ineffective for ventures to actually hire people with skin in the game. Because what happens is that, let's say you're hiring somebody as a rock star engineer who's currently at a 30 lakh CTC, right? And you're hiring him at a 40-50 lakh CTC plus some ESOPs, right? What's the guarantee that the person will actually not jump the ship again when he gets a 70 lakh offer soon? Because the ecosystem today is such that smart engineers, designers, and product managers are hugely in short supply. The demand for digitization has increased across all, be it tech businesses or even offline businesses that are now digitizing themselves or having to digitize themselves. So talent in the tech industry is in short supply. Plus, the advent of remote has actually made the world really flat. So businesses in the US and other countries, developed countries, actually hiring in India and giving them dollar salaries. I have entrepreneur friends who are trying to recruit, and they're seeing 2x, 3x jump in salaries that that candidates are getting. There are there are reports that have been published about the percentage of candidates who are actually rejecting offers has increased significantly because they have better offers, and especially among the 3 to 7 year experience category, the younger but now and they are the doers, right? They are the doers. They're going to be the future leaders and managers. They're hugely in short supply right now, right? And that has created this disparity and pay war among ventures to hire good talent, right? And how does one compete as a venture when there is this pay war happening, right? One way to compete is to give, participate in that pay war and give a better offer. But then there is no guarantee that after 6 months the person will not leave for another, for another great
opportunity. Yeah.
And what happens is that it's not just when that happens, when the person jumps the ship, right? As you know, it's not just the hiring cost or the training cost, right? That's the least of the worries. The biggest problem is the time lost in those 6 to 12 months when he or she is there with us, right? When their mind share, their focus, their dedication is not so much on building for the future vision of the venture, right? Because they're more focused perhaps on the financial gain that they're receiving, right? And so therefore, it all starts with hiring and filtering the right candidates, and compensation structures have a huge role to play in that, to ensure skin in the game from the candidates who are joining. And ESOPs for skin in the game is not working. So therefore, we thought there is a solution required for creating a win-win scenario rather than a lose-lose scenario. ESOPs being a lose-lose scenario. Creating a win-win scenario for skin in the game so that employees are able to trust and have a predictable upside from the compromise they're making on their current pay. Not because the venture is not having the capital to pay them, but because skin in the game is important to build team ownership for the longer term vision of the company, so that the people stay back for the longer term.
Avinash, you'll be surprised, right? Across last few days, I've been having multiple conversations with founders. I've also been having conversations with some very senior employees across some of the marquee startups that we've had in the Indian ecosystem, right? And you'll actually be surprised, right? I mean, I kind of while you're talking of what you are, and what VenEx offers, right? I'm in my mind thinking of those conversations that I've had, right? And there is a massive amount of distrust on both the sides. I mean, there have been employees who've been given ESOPs, and when they were sort of say moving out, and then there was a time to sort of encash those ESOPs. There are certain clauses that were not that restricted them, right, to sort of for whatever effort that they put in, and everything that they were eligible for, not accruing to them in that sense and way, right, as they'd expected. And on the other side, I have been talking to a lot of founders, who continue to, like you said, right, struggle with explaining good employees the relevance of having ESOPs, and and them being part of the entire overall growth possibility that this organization that they're building is going to have, right? So I mean, it's something which has happened very, very recently, right? And I can only resonate with what you are saying, right? It's a very important need of a tool and a platform which can help both the parties gain adequate trust is so much more important, right? Which can help them evaluate it with transparency, which doesn't sort of necessarily carry a lot of those clauses. There is absolute visibility in terms of how the growth is, and how the contribution is maturing, and so many other things, right? So yeah, I think with that, let's dive into the product. Avinash, I'm so excited about this.
Sure, I'll just give you a very I would say brief example through just 1 or 2 slides. Can you see this slide?
Yes, Avinash.
All right. So this is an example for the scenario of hiring or even appraisals, where ventures are using VenEx. So so this bar chart, so this section shows the previous pay the employee was getting or the candidate was getting, right? So which is, let's say, 25 lakh fixed and 5 lakh variable per annum, a total of 30 lakh, right? And this is the competing offers they're getting, or whatever benchmark the company has established for evaluating or assessing the pay that the employee will get, right? So this shows basically a 40 lakh, so the fixed portion of 40 lakh, a variable portion of 10 lakh, and on top of that, ESOPs that they're being offered, right? The ESOP portion, which is a 10 lakh, is the discount on ESOPs, right? So that becomes like a total package for the person. And then the ESOP portion is having a, let's say, 10x value in the next 4-5 years, right? But that value is more or less intangible for the employee, right? And not only is it intangible, it's locked up. They don't know when it will unlock, and they may have to pay taxes to the government even before they can foresee any cash benefits from those ESOPs, right? That becomes a huge hurdle. We have seen employees foregoing ESOPs at the time of vesting, as in not exercising those options, converting them into shares, because of having to pay taxes to the government. Now, while the tax laws are changing for the better, but that's happening very gradually, and it's still a huge risk for the employees, because at the time of resignation, for example, they still have to exercise those options, take shares, and pay taxes to the government for the discount portion. So it's basically value is unlocked. Value is locked up, and taxation is premature. And those reasons, they don't basically value this. They look at this 40 plus 10 primarily, right? Now, what happens in case of VenEx is, and now this is a competing offer, right? So you have the choice now as the venture, as a, let's say, Series B funded business, to top up this offer, give the matching offer or give a 60 lakh offer, right? In cash, or use an innovative tool that changes the rule, right? So what happens in VenEx is that, so this is an example of a pay package powered by VenEx. So if the business has taken the VenEx solution, then they are able to offer this kind of a pay package, which is slightly lesser in the cash portion, right? Because you want some skin in the game as a filter to hire great talent, who's not only there for cash benefits, but also going to be perhaps staying with the venture for the longer term and building some meaningful value, right? So therefore, there is some reduction in their benchmark pay, right? But in lieu of that, the employee is offered, or the candidate is offered, a fixed, predictable, prefixed, upside. This upside is given in the form of wealth points. So what happens is that we help the venture create for every employee a wealth account powered by VenEx. And they can keep adding wealth points to it based on agreed, agreed pay packages with the employee, as well as the annual bonuses if they want to put a portion of those, the annual pay hikes, a portion of those, and even one-time rewards, right? But these are not cash, right? This is given in the form of points, and it kind of is a measure of loyalty, performance, and sweat that the person puts in into the venture, and the person gets a fixed upside on it. So in this case, let's take this example of 50 lakh total. Instead of that, if the cash portion is 40 lakh, the person has got another 50 lakh, which is 5x of the risk they are taking. So if they're taking a risk of 10 lakh cash, they're getting a 5x upside, which is given to them in writing through an agreement, and it is given in the form of wealth points, and then it is paid out over a period of time. So how it is paid out over a period of time is demonstrated is in this second chart. So these are monthly payouts. So first of all, we recommend that the payouts are not a pot of gold at the end of the rainbow like it is there in the case of ESOPs. So these are monthly payouts which are linked to business milestones or business progress. For example, revenue share, simple revenue share. Let's take that as an example. What that ensures is that the value is not locked up for some event like a secondary purchase of shares or exit or acquisition or IPO in future. But as the business keeps progressing, as revenues keep happening, the employee keeps getting a certain small revenue share that is predetermined when the employee is joining or at the time of appraisal, right? And that revenue share every month they keep receiving. So that keeps it gamified with business milestones. And initially, the revenue share they are receiving is a small portion of the sweat they are taking, or the risk they are taking in the venture, right? Like a sweat investment, you can say. So if they're investing 10 lakh worth of sweat in the company, as in not taking that much pay in cash, so that becomes like a sweat investment. In that case, the revenue share in the first year may be only about maybe a lakh rupees, right? So the 9 lakh rupees is still their sweat investment. But what happens is over a period of time, they receive the remaining portion which is promised to them, right? So that becomes their upside, which is predetermined upside. So there is, it's first of all, there is no unpredictability here unless the venture goes bust, right? God forbid.
Right.
So there is no unpredictability apart from that. Secondly, it is not locked up value. It is, they're going to get it as revenue keeps progressing, and they will have a dashboard. Both parties will have a dashboard. They can have a look at what is the status of their wealth account, and how much portion has been paid so far, what is the remaining portion, and all that. So it's very transparent, very trustworthy, paid on a monthly basis, gamified with business milestones, and prefixed upside. So that enables the employee to trust the system a lot better than ESOPs and actually take a sweat investment or take a lower cash pay. Because see, what happens is that if it's not predictable, the reason they want this cash is not because their lifestyle requires it, right? They do make investments into mutual funds or equity markets, right? They want this cash take home, even if it's tax paid, and then they invest these tax paid dollars into external markets, some of this, right? Whatever, based on each person's risk appetite and based on each person's lifestyle expenses, right? So they put their savings into mutual funds or something like that for just 5 to 15% gains, right? 5-20% gains. But they're not willing to take this 10x upside by actually, through ESOPs because of the reasons we discussed. But if they have a fixed upside, which is anywhere between 2x to 10x, that is promised to them from day one, right? Then there is no reason they would not take up this offer, because they are investing into risk instruments outside, right? And that's tax paid dollars. Instead of that, if they're investing in this form, which is actually not a cash investment, it's a sweat investment. So it's also a saving on the taxes they are receiving. So they are basically not paying those portion of the taxes until they get these upsides. So as the payments keep happening is when they have to pay taxes on it, right? So so they're getting growth on the taxable portion as well, on the potential tax that they would have paid otherwise, right? That is also compounding and multiplying their returns. If you talk in financial or wealth creation terms. So that broadly is the solution. Please let me know if this is clear, or if you have any
Avinash,
queries on. Yeah.
Avinash, I think this is very clear. It'll be nice if you could take us to some of the implementation aspects of the solution.
Sure. All right. So there are multiple ways in which ventures are using VenEx, this solution and this model, right? One is for hiring and appraisals, as we discussed, right? Hiring, it is enabling them to beat competition by changing the rules of the game, right? In a completely unique manner. In appraisals or rewards, they can similarly use this for giving a pay hike, because even pay hike given by businesses gets compared with what they're getting as a pay hike potentially outside if they ended up jumping the ship, right? So appraisals are extremely important. Similarly, to retain employees and to ensure they remain invested with the venture. So they can use it for hiring and appraisals. In addition to that, what ventures are doing is this becomes like a wealth creation opportunity for the employee, like an investment into a small cap instrument, but not cash investment. I just want to reiterate that this is not cash investment. This is sweat investment. And that small cap venture happens to be, or mid cap venture happens to be, the company that I'm working with, right? Which is actually great, because then I'm already investing my time there and I already know the people. So, it's a lot more in my control, and I'm able to get a prefix upside based on the business progress of the company over a period of time, right? So that is like a wealth creation opportunity where an employee can voluntarily agree to take a reduction in their pay, right? While making this sweat investment in the company, and in lieu of that, they're promised, they're committed a certain upside between 2x to 10x, and that gets paid to them over a period of time, like 2 to 4 years, based on business progress, right? And they have a dashboard to again manage this wealth account. So that is another way in which ventures are using this. And similarly for retaining, right? Suppose an employee does get an external offer, then how does one match it without really matching the cash portion, right? So this becomes another tool to match it in a manner that you're not having to go out of your budget right now and conserve that budget for now, ensure skin in the game, and pay back in future. So it also enables the company to actually share wealth with the people who are actually committing their time and sweat in the company and performing good, right? And they can gamify it with performance, and that just enables the whole wider team to build the whole business in a resonating manner. Everybody working together, rather than there being a disparity between those who have ESOPs and those who don't. So this is an equal opportunity tool that can be extended to all employees of the company, because there is no equity dilution that's happening in this process. So those are various applications. How we help the business implement this solution is, there is a full implementation journey, and there are tools, templates, and dashboards which have been created for each stage, starting from feasibility of various applications of VenEx for that particular business, and prioritizing among the applications that we saw. Also, then it requires a custom cash flow modeling, right? So what we do is we take, or our platform takes, the cash flow model, the business projections, and the business history of the company, and then applies the VenEx model to it, and gives out a customized VenEx powered cash flow model, which helps in carving out the revenue share pool, or profit share pool, or funding share pool, or a combination of those, for paying back the sweat bonuses to the employees. And these sweat bonuses pay for themselves because of the acceleration in growth that happens because of this, right? So that acceleration in growth, sorry, that acceleration in growth has a magical compounding effect, so that by the time the company has to pay back those sweat bonus upsides, the company has already been on an accentuated revenue curve, that pays back, that helps paying back or creating the budget for that upside that is being paid to the employees, right? So it's almost like borrowing money from the future success of the company, not because the company has any shortage of capital right now, but because by borrowing money from future success, you're creating skin in the game and then rewarding the people based on that future growth. So it's a win-win cycle that is created. So we help the company model this at the beginning of the engagement, as well as from time to time. Every time there is, the company hits, let's say, new revenue level. We also assist the company in selling this proposition to their employees, their potential hires, and it can be even sold to potential partners. We've had instances of vendors, service providers engaging with ventures in this model, where they're putting skin in the game, which ensures a deeper engagement, a deeper partnership with key vendors, key service providers, and even channel partners who bring business to the venture. Then we help the venture in the appropriate documentation to mitigate legal, taxation, and compliance risks associated with this kind of a solution. Right? There are templates which are legally vetted with that we enable the venture with, and they can put this through their own individual diligence, through their own legal system and their accounting system. Right? There are dashboards then that are given to all the stakeholders, which show, as I mentioned, it show in a graphical as well as in other manners, the wealth points added, the contingent liability that the venture has for making these payments in future, right? Contingent to they doing the revenue that the revenue progress of the company and the profit progress of the company and the funding progress of the company, depending upon the rules they have configured in the VenEx system. And the various sweat bonuses that are paid out, the dashboards related to that, and the capital that is conserved, or the sweat investments, or the skin in the game generated, all those are measured and shown to various stakeholders in a dashboard, including to the employee who's participating. And then we help the venture in continuously evolving. As I mentioned, as the business hits new levels of revenue, then for future sweat investments, they don't need to pay the same levels of revenue share, right? The revenue shares can go down. So we help optimize this by redoing the cash flow modeling, at every stage of the venture, and then keep evolving the model, and also proactive communication of the model to wider organization. We help the venture with the right templates of communication for that, because initially when a few employees adopt it, with the trust and gamification that is built in it through monthly payouts, that enables a great word of mouth, and more employees are able to then take that bet with of sweat investing in the company. And we help with that whole process in terms of communication. So our focus is on communication, transparency, trust, and a win-win scenario, and we enable the business in doing that through this implementation journey. I think with that, I'll take a pause and see if you have any questions, and then we can accordingly discuss.
A fantastic presentation, right? And I think this just brings in so much more clarity, right? I am personally excited about this, right? When I look at the product. But Avinash, I have a few questions, right? In an organizational setup, and especially in a growth organizational setup, right? And when I look at this model, right, there are people who are part of the revenue center, and then there are people who are part of the cost center, right? Revenue center is very clear in terms of the milestones, targets, what they've achieved. It's very mathematical, right? There are clear matrices that are established, right? That you go on to track, you do it weekly, fortnightly, monthly, quarterly, and so on and so forth, right? And when it comes to cost center, right? Say for example, post-sales environment, right? Call center arrangements, and so many other things, right? That are part of it, right? Not necessarily, which are essentially which help you deliver better, right? But not clearly out there selling it, right? Are not the frontliners, right? It gets very difficult in an environment to really sort of evaluate the performance, right? And typically, what most organizations do is, create a bonus structure, right? Around incentivizing them. And of course, there is a standard ESOP structure that is there, right? And that's something which is a horizontal for pretty much everybody who's out there, right? Here, given that, you've kind of kind of done it in a completely different way, right? Where you're saying that you get incentivized basis the contribution that you make in the journey of the company. How do you do it for those people who are not on the front line, right? Who are ensuring that the quality of delivery is amazing, right? Are in a post-sales environment. How do you do it for that?
That's a great question, Ashu. Thanks for asking that.
Sure.
I will once again, show a show a slide and explain this. So, so how it works is, see, it's a great combination of individual performance
Right.
in whatever manner it is measured by the company. It's of course differently measured for engineers or call center executives versus for, let's say, salespeople, right? But it is measured or it should be measured, right? So in whatever manner the venture is measuring the performance, so great combination of individual performance and company's progress. So how it works is that each person puts in 4 inputs to the venture, right? Everybody brings in whatever experience, education that they're bringing in their profile. They put in a certain effort in the business in terms of part-time, full-time, more than full-time, etc. Right? And they deliver a certain performance from it in their own functional area. And they show a certain loyalty to the venture by staying with the venture and build a certain level of trust with the venture, right? With these inputs, the company decides from time to time the intended value of pay to that person, right?
Mm-hmm.
Be it the fixed portion of CTC or the variable portion of CTC or any one-time bonuses, rewards to be given to the person, right?
Sure.
This company continues to decide and continues to give this input to VenEx platform. VenEx role starts from this line onwards. Basis this intended value of the cash pay, and based on prior configurations that the company has done onto the VenEx platform and prior configuration that the employee has done in terms of their sweat appetite, right? Basis those configurations, the platform gives a portion of this in the usual cycle, right, to the employee, and the remaining portion goes into her wealth account. So this contributes wealth points to her wealth accounts from the remaining portion, and those wealth points are paid over a few years. The period is elastic based on how fast the business grows or how slow the business grows, right?
Okay.
So there is that level of risk that is built in, because only then there is skin in the game, and that can be rewarded with a significant upside. Employees can contribute more if they want, and companies can match or multiply that contribution, right?
Okay.
And monthly payouts are happening. So basically, the input to the platform is based on usual performance metrics, and basis that whatever is the compensation being provided by the company to the employee, right? Or whatever compensation is intended, even if it's not committed to the employee, whatever is the internal intended pay or bonus to the employee, right? That is an input from time to time to the platform, and the platform then basis prior configurations decides the sweat bonuses to be paid out, the wealth points to be added, the sweat bonuses to be paid out, and all this goes as a recommendation to the business. The business reviews, their HR finance teams review it, and then they accordingly finally make the payments out to the employees. So so that's how it is. It's like a unique combination between individual performance, which is the input, but the output is based on the company's progress, apart from the fixed portion, apart from the cash portion.
Interesting. Avinash, I'd request you to switch back. Yes.
Sure.
Avinash, when I look at this, right, I'm also sort of in my mind, I'm sort of thinking, what is an ideal organization? Because a startup, for example, a typical startup, which is say started out, not even raised some capital, is essentially bootstrapped, which is going to go through its ups and downs, right? In terms of establishing its product, establishing its market, and so on and so forth, right? So possibly, which is say in the early stage, a very early stage of its inception, and and sort of building it up and all that, right? I believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, right? Is this a product which will suit a startup which is in that environment, or this is a product which is typically it's going to work better when you have a slightly more predictable environment, right? where you have an established product, you have done your MVP, you have your first few customers, you have a certain sense of, in terms of repeatability of, say, consumption, cash flows, matrices are clear. So is this typically for a slightly more established environment, say a company which is beyond Series A, or say Series B, or companies that are in the either SMB space, right, which are doing a certain top line? There is a very predictable revenue possibility. They know their clients, costs are controlled. All of that is there, right? Is it for a slightly more stable environment? Is it, or is this something which can be applied to in a very very early stage business as well?
The value of the solution to both the parties, right, as you I think rightly understood, for both employees as well as the employers, is the most optimal or the highest for mid to large enterprises, right? So on the upper side, there is no cap, but yes, there has to be, for the employees to be able to really perceive this as a win-win solution, there has to be some predictability on revenues, some history of revenues, some history of funding. All that enables the employee to kind of take that bet, and put in that skin in the game. Also, what happens is that in early stages, that skin in the game is more or less the filter anyways while hiring, and
Right.
that comes naturally, right? I mean, because the venture is not yet proven, so people who join are people who really, really believe in that venture, right?
Sure.
So that is a natural, skin in the game and chemistry which is there. But as the venture, as the business keeps growing, especially after the first and second round of funding, Series A, Series B rounds of funding, is when the challenge of not being able to establish skin in the game from employees is larger,
Right.
Because they have the cash to throw, right? And the entrepreneurs that are smart, they actually understand the pitfalls of hiring by throwing cash, right? As we discussed, the pitfalls of the
Right.
people, then there is no guarantee for the people not jumping the boat, and that becomes a huge opportunity cost and loss of time and opportunity when that happens
Right.
for the venture, right? Much more than the hiring cost or training cost. So so the stakes are a lot higher with right hiring for Series A and Series B and beyond, right? And it becomes a lot more sellable to employees, a lot more predictable for them. So it's a great win-win combination for those stages. So that's the most, I think, optimal, I would say, stage of ventures that should use VenEx.
Very interesting. And also, Avinash, while you're saying that, one point that comes to my mind is that, ESOPs is not necessarily available to all, right? You don't offer
Yes.
it across the board, right? So, for example, if I have a team of, say, 400-500 people, I might not be, it might not be available to all, right? It might just be available to, say, 10, 15, 20% of the top talent, which is there, right? Which is essentially what the market is chasing. And I think here with this solution, there's a possibility to sort of go out there and sort of offer it to everybody who's within the organization, right? So the impact that you can draw out of it is so much deeper and long term. Is that correct?
Absolutely, absolutely. That's really very well understood, because when some employees have an ESOP opportunity and the others don't, right?
Mhm.
That creates disparity and creates lack of equal opportunity, right?
Right.
And what the other employees are feeling, right, inside, and we've experienced this ourselves and seen other entrepreneurs experience this, is that
Right.
there is this feeling of we not being, the employee feels that there is a difference between those who have the ESOP opportunity and those who don't, right?
Mhm.
This, by the way, doesn't happen so much in the West, but in India, and in markets like India, we've seen this, that only a percentage of employees are offered ESOPs, right?
Right.
Especially for growing ventures. So yes, absolutely, this can be a great leveler where everybody has the opportunity voluntarily to make something like a systematic investment of sweat on
Sure.
a monthly basis, or subscribe to like a systematic sweat investment plan, into their own company for a prefixed upside that they are getting from it.
Avinash, I've met a lot of people, right, who out there who claim that we're going to create 100,000 entrepreneurs and all of that, right, and whatnot. And I'm sure you would have possibly, you've been in this ecosystem, you would have come across certain jargons around the same lines, right? But I think what you're creating, is where you are actually and genuinely creating so many entrepreneurs, who do not necessarily have the ability to take that risk, but now here they are, and it can actually become part of the growth process, right? And there is a certain sense of ownership that can be brought in, right? And that's linked to long-term, growth possibilities, right, of the organization. I think this is very interesting at so many levels, right? As an entrepreneur, as a founder, somebody who works with a lot of companies. I mean, the biggest challenge is retention of people. I mean, the fact that they leave in the middle, and like you highlighted in your point earlier, right? That I mean, cost of say certain things like a training, hiring is of course that is there, but I think the fact that there is a huge discontinuity that is going to come in because there was a certain person who was involved in a certain or she was involved in a certain process, and now they're not going to be there to bring in somebody, bring him or her to pace, and then expect to achieve similar results is so much more difficult, right? And so much more complex. And I think here is something which can really cement the relationship, and I think have a more longer term relationship, and I think a trust relationship more importantly. So yeah, I think I like some of the pieces that you highlighted in the conversation. Avinash, two questions, right? One, is this something that can be utilized for companies that are registered outside, or operating in foreign markets? That's number one. Number two, can employees convert their unvested ESOP in, say, the wealth points and the VenEx structure?
Sure, absolutely. Let me answer the second question first.
Sure.
Yes, absolutely. So let's say the employee was offered ESOPs plan for, which would vest, let's say in 48 months, the standard, let's say vesting period, right? And they've completed 12 months
Sure.
and they vested those stocks.
Sure.
Now, they may not have exercised those options, right?
Mm-hmm.
And apart from this, they have 36 months of unvested stocks as well, right? Sorry, unvested options as well, right? So both of those, the company can actually give them an option to convert both unexercised as well as unvested options to the VenEx model by, by perhaps matching the upside, that they were offered at the time of selling ESOPs to them, right? They may have been offered a plan, a vision that the ESOPs would be of 10x value. Now the company need not match that entire 10x because there was a bunch of risk that was associated there, right? But here the risk is much lesser. So the employee could be offered a 4x or a 5x upside, in the form of wealth points, and they could sign an agreement saying they are foregoing their options or unvested options and converting them to wealth points. That's absolutely feasible. Can this be done in various markets with or without the ESOP conversion model? Yes, absolutely, because primarily primarily what's happening is that it's basically a fixed pay and variable pay model, right?
Right.
Usually the fixed pay and variable pay model is there in almost every market where business happens, and this is essentially that. Technically, it's very simple. From a legal standpoint, accounting standpoint, it's basically that, right? The only difference is that here, the variable pay can continue even after the employee resigns, based on the resignation and retention rules configured by the company, right? And even there is a vesting model which is there within VenEx as well, but it's a much simpler, much more cleaner, and much more win-win vesting model.
Right.
So barring that vesting model aside, whatever wealth point balance that the person has in her account at the time of resigning, right, that balance will continue to pay the person for some time until that balance becomes nil, right?
Okay.
So because the businesses continue to accrue revenue and there is a certain revenue share, for example, that is agreed to be paid out, that can continue to be paid out, that will get continue to be paid out. The agreement will mention that, so the employee has the right to receive that revenue and managed by the third party like VenEx. And as long as the wealth point balance is there in the person's account after resignation as well. So that's the only difference perhaps between a fixed pay and variable pay model, which is traditional, and this one, where the variable pay portion, which is the sweat bonuses as we call it, can be paid even post resignation. And that's when it creates a greater trust as well, with certain boundaries of vesting and resignation period or retention period, etc.
Right.
Beyond that, it should get paid even in future, because only then it's like a sweat investment. So the
Sure.
employees are treated like investors in many ways, but not investors of cash, but investors of sweat and effort.
I mean, that's very interesting. And can an employee carry his her, which you said, right? But for example, I'm working with an organization A, and I have an account, say, whatever, Z. Okay.
Yeah.
Can I carry the same account to a different organization, which is possibly which VenEx is a partner to, and which offers a similar model? Can this be a universal system that that becomes where I sort of say collect my points, and I can manage my growth, and and whatever is happening with the money in the account?
Um, no, that may not be possible, because see, the whole idea is that the person invested sweat in company A, right?
Sure.
And the company is paying back that person from its own growth, right?
Right.
Now, suppose there is a bad scenario and then company A is not growing, right?
Mhm.
There is no reason in any case that company B should be paying back the employee uh, from its own growth, right?
Sure.
So irrespective of whether the company is growing fast or slow, it is basically a payback that the company A is giving to the employee for the sweat that they put into the venture.
Cool. I think I had a slightly different question, but I hear what you're saying, right? Avinash, what kind of approvals are required to implement a VenEx like system, right? I mean, do you have to take certain statutory approvals, or is this something which is typically a board level call, and this can be implemented? I know for SMBs and which are typically promoter driven companies, the decision making happens in a very flat way. But typically for funded companies, is there a certain, I mean, do they have to sort of follow a certain procedure channel, or is this something which is like a plug and play solution and can be implemented like within, say, a few days?
That's again a great question. Yes. So what we recommend is that when we help the company create their revenue share pool by doing their custom cash flow modeling, right? And when they decide on a particular revenue share pool, or funding share or profit share or a combination of those, right? Primarily all the cash in events, be it revenue, be it be it profitability, or be it funding, right?
Sure.
So when they create this revenue share pool, for example, then we recommend that they actually disclose this revenue share pool to the board and take an approval, right?
Mhm.
Because that can impact, or there can be a perception that it can impact margins of the business, right?
Right.
Although we in the cash flow modeling we demonstrate this to the company as well as to their investors on how it actually does not impact margins even in future, and how the sweat bonuses are actually paid by themselves
Right.
through various simulations that we run for them, and they can also run it in their own at their own end, various
Right.
simulations. So yes, but we do recommend that an approval is taken from the board. Secondly, but it's completely the business's choice, because some investors have really empowered their CEOs, right, to take calls on fixed and variable pay and performance based pay even for the longer term. So in that case, it's absolutely fine. Apart from this approval process, we recommend complete disclosure of the liability, and the liability is not a real liability; it's a contingent liability. So, for example, in the balance sheet, it doesn't appear in the main section of the assets and liabilities. The wealth point balance, which is there, the total wealth point balance of all employees and vendors put together for that company, that balance goes in contingent liability in the notes to account section in the Indian system. And that contingent liability is disclosed to all the stakeholders, including investors, through the annual audited balance sheet process. So that's how the contingent liability is disclosed every year.
Interesting. Avinash, I mean, while of course we operate in the ecosystem that we do, we understand ESOPs, right? it's been a very, very challenging play as a whole, right? I mean, the entire concept has been very, very challenging, right? And I think the biggest question around ESOPs or any kind of, say, incentivization, right, of employees, which is, which sort of is a long-term relationship that you're building, and which has payouts which are linked to, say, performance, or performance of the company or performance of the individual. They're typically very, very difficult to implement, right? It just gets so much more cumbersome to track all of those things, right? And I think a lot of organizations shy away from this fact. That this is. I mean, who's going to track it? Who's going to manage it? How are you going to do all of those things? How are you going to implement it? More importantly, right? Because in a lot of organizations, the care is not very clearly defined, right? I mean, you're supposed to do things and all of that, but I think there's a 60% clarity, 50% clarity, 70% clarity, right? But it's not completely 100% clarity, right? That these are A, B, C, D things that you're supposed to do, and you're going to be evaluated on all of these things and stuff like that, right? It gets very, very difficult, right? And I think typically in an enterprise model, nobody wants to sort of take a responsibility, right? How do you and your team help with the implementation of that? I mean, do you handhold them into the process, or you do literally sort of take it over, saying that, listen, we're going to run for you. You don't need to worry about it. We're going to do it end to end for you, and then from there you can take it forward, right? Is there some sort of a handholding that happens, or what kind of handholding happens? Let me put it that way.
Sure, sure. So there are two components to it. One is the platform in terms of the tools, templates, dashboards, right? And then the other is the service part of it. So on the platform, that is of course the core enabler for both the models. But on the service side, they could use whatever level they want to use, right? So in one level, we are doing a complete end-to-end service provisioning to them. Okay. Where and there also they can pick and choose. Like for example, when it comes to pitching to a potential hire, right? One is we can extend a tool to do that and empower their HR teams to pitch and their hiring managers to actually pitch to the hiring candidates, or we can actually come on the call if needed and pitch to the prospects. So that is also available as a potential, for ventures that initially need some handholding for that, right? Because once they've done a few of those, sure, then they can, they get the hang of it and they can actually do it themselves. So that's absolutely there. Secondly, similarly for wealth creation opportunity for existing employees, again, we can enable them with the presentation required, the FAQs required, etc., and they can have a conversation with their existing employees directly, or they can invite us to that particular, to those calls to answer specific technical questions that the employees may ask, and we would be happy to join those calls sure, or meetings and enable them. So I think on the service side, we are very flexible depending upon each business. On the platform side, there is a requirement that they use the tools, dashboards, because that enables everybody to do it in a very efficient manner. Sure. And enables transparency and accuracy for everybody.
Interesting. Avinash, what does it take an organization? I mean, what is the the financial dent that an organization, and dent might not be the right word. I mean, I don't mean it in a literal sense, but what does it take an organization to implement this? I mean, from a cost standpoint.
Sure.
Or maybe with this, right? What's your revenue model, right? What is VenEx charging out of implementing cost?
Right. So we hugely believe in value creation based model. Our fees to the business are primarily success based, and we define success and drive success in the form of two key matrices. One is the wealth points awarded to employees or vendors, and prospects, candidates, etc. Right. So wealth points awarded is one key metric, because that also is an indication of the sweat investment, or the foregoing of cash or intended cash that the employee is being offered, right? Whether it was committed cash or it was intended cash, wealth points replace in some way the cash portion, right? So one metric is wealth points awarded. The other metric is the sweat bonuses paid out over the longer term, right? So wealth point awarded, for example, is for that financial year, and sweat bonuses paid out is, let's say, over the next 2 to 4 years of that business progress, right? So we charge a percentage of both of those, a very small percentage of both of those, and then there is a minimum guarantee of revenue to us for the effort that we put in terms of services. Right. So that's a nominal annual minimum guarantee paid out on a monthly or quarterly basis.
Interesting, Avinash. Avinash, it's an interesting product, right? I think we've understood that through the course of this conversation, right? And I think more importantly, what excites me is the possibility of creating, thousands and thousands of entrepreneurs, right? Who are part of your journey, who are part of the growth process, and so on and so forth, right? What's the next couple of years for VenEx like, right? I mean, what are some of the things that are there in the pipeline? I mean, what's say the next 2 years, 3 years, 5 years? I think it's a very dynamic time, right? It's a dynamic and a difficult time, right? So I think I'll let you choose the time and the period in terms of how do you plan your journey?
Sure, sure. All right, Ashu. So see, our vision is basically to to ensure that, and not ensure it, but at least work towards. And we do visualize and fantasize about this world where every employee across any organization, across all organizations, have a similar sense of ownership as its founders or leaders do, right?
Sure.
Because that can be a game changer for that organization. And if it is done for many organizations, it can be a game changer for the world altogether, where people are able to have a sense of ownership and work with more passion, not just in smaller ventures, early stage ventures, but in larger, mid-size and larger businesses as well, right? So that's what we are working towards, Ashu, and we intend to kind of take this to first markets like India and US, and then to other markets. But India and US itself will be large markets for us to kind of work with. We've started our journey just 6 months ago, and this pivot that we are talking about is just 3 months old.
Sure.
And we have a few kind of early adopter clients in India.
Right.
And we are figuring out how to take it to the US market. We are in fact looking for colleagues or GTM partners who could work in a success-based model, the VenEx model itself, for example,
Sure.
right? And entrepreneurial people or small firms, boutique firms that can actually work as GTM partners, and who understand the US market. So once we have somebody, either an individual or a firm or a company which is willing to take this to the US market, is when we will start more meaningfully understanding the US market, and then slowly take it to the US market as well. So broadly, that's the roadmap. Currently, India, and in very near future, US. Through this session, I in fact invite those who are listening and
Sure.
have anybody they can refer from the US market as a potential GTM colleague or a GTM partner firm. They can get in touch with us, on our website, either venex.co.in or at my email address, avinash@venex.co.in. Whatever other mechanisms that you can recommend, Ashu, for reaching out to that for people.
Avinash, we'll absolutely do that. I think, we're towards the end of the conversation, Avinash, my last question, right? One advice for founders, right? Given, what you've built, is essentially, a value creation tool that founders can use to incentivize their employees. On a lot of occasions, that priority gets misplaced in the process, right, of growth. You're not able to really sort of prioritize as well, right? You've broadly done some mathematics, you've done some arrangements, but you've not really sort of had the chance to take down deeper, right? And really visualize, like you said, right? How my employees can get incentivized in the process and all of that, right? One piece of advice that you have for them. I mean, you've been a business leader yourself. You run very, very large teams, right? One piece of advice that you think is very important for any business leader who's creating an enterprise in a very dynamic environment where people are the most important custodians of your growth and your foundation.
Sure. I think, see, there are two key pillars of success, right? Organization and capital. That, as we know, any business is built on these two key pillars, right?
Sure.
What happens is that founders, a lot of founders feel that while they know that the employees are very important and the organization is very important, and without them they cannot build the whole large business, but when it comes to financially rewarding, there is a disparity between what, for example, investors are offered, right? I mean, investors are treated as financial investors, risk-taking investors, and they are offered these 10x, 20x upsides, right? But employees and their sweat and effort, right? That is not sometimes valued by some founders. So, my advice to founders is to treat your employees and their sweat investments, their effort that they're putting in. First of all, filter at the hiring time, and at the appraisal time as well. And once you have the right team and those right people, value them, and give them financial rewards similar to what you would give to financial investors, because the sweat investments are equally, if not more, valuable to the venture and the success of the venture and the growth of the venture. And the future will pay for itself if I say that with a lot of responsibility, that the future does pay for itself if you make the right commitments and then meet those agree to meet those commitments.
Avinash, it was a pleasure to have you with us. I've always enjoyed our conversations that we've had offline. I think it's with what you're doing at VenEx, I think it's so much more relevant in today's time, right? I mean, I can remember a conversation that I had with a very, very seasoned senior founder a couple of years back, right? Where he said that, he took me to the window of his office, right? And he said that, do you see the next 300, 400 cars that are there outside on the parking on the street, right? And this is a founder in Noida, right? And he said, this is something that my employees have earned out of their bonuses that they've made in last 6 months, right? And it was amazing, Avinash, because I knew some of those people, right? Had they been in a regular environment, possibly getting to that milestone of buying a car would have been very, very difficult, right? The fact that this founder was very proud of what he did, what he made them do, was heartening to see, right? And the fact that the longevity that their association had and the continuity that it provided to the organization was phenomenal, right? Because there was a set of people who said that, listen, you helped us do this much, right? You helped us get to this point, and we will do it for you. And there came a bad time, right? For this founder, for in the industry at large, right? This team did not move, right? He had those 1,000 people who were working with him through that tough phase, right? And I think VenEx possibly helps you do that, right? Not a lot of organizations have planned their structures, participative structures, in a very concrete manner. But I think here you are with a solution and which helps one do that, right? So thank you so much, Avinash. I think it was an amazing conversation, like always. This time on the camera, for taking the time out and being with us and taking us through VenEx.
Thanks a lot, Ashu, for this opportunity, as well as congratulations and thank you for all the great work that you are doing, through Asia Tech Journal, as well as your other initiatives like W Hub, etc. So keep up the great work.
Thanks, Avinash. Good to have you. Bye.
All right. Bye-bye. Thank you.